It's wonderful to be here tonight, and I'm really pleased. Somewhat worried about being the first speaker. You've got to sort of break the ice, and however, it does play to my theme in a way, which is improvisation. I am an improviser, and whilst you've been told during the past few minutes everybody has prepared, something in great detail, I haven't. I have come here to improvise for you right now, because I feel that in talking about improvisation, if I don't improvise, then what the hell am I doing here? Improvisation is a funny thing, it's about the moment. And as an improvising musician, I try to express whatever it is that's happening in time while time is occurring, which is a paradox, because of course time, in recent understanding of what time is as the fourth dimension, if you like, is something which doesn't really exist in the sense that you can pin it down. No sooner have you lived through a moment than the moment has already passed you. So we live in a sort of a continuum. And I've read one recent writer calling transition from one instant to the next the blurring. And we learn to be able to construct reality because we blur our way through time. We lean into time, that's the way I like to think of it. So time passes us by, and rather than living in the slipstream of time, we lean into it because we know that it's coming at us and we are in front of it. And improvised music, which is my particular area of interest and what has really revealed the nature of time for me, is something about understanding that as things flow past you, you need to be in charge of that process as best you can. And there are various principles which come into play in order to be able to achieve that. I'll just step aside from it by referring for a moment to the experience of a lot of musicians who think that their sole duty as musicians is to convey the text of a piece of music. And that's a little bit like reading an old street map. When you look at a piece of music, it's full of a semiotic kind of jungle. There's all sorts of little signs and symbols on it. But really it's just a set of instructions. It's a coded set of instructions. Play this now, play it loud, soft, play it fast, slow. But for many people, that is the experience of making music. It's located on that page. And for some of those people, if you take that page away, they don't know what to do. They've got the instrument, but they're not quite sure what to do with it. Most music in the world is improvised music. And to be able to break through that barrier, to understand that the music is really, it's a conversation between you and an extension of you, which is the instrument you play, whether it's the voice itself, your body, which is a kind of a drum, or something which has been built as an extension. It is who you are. And another way of existing in time is to be able to make that instrument speak as an extension of yourself. So, as an improviser, I've learned that there are kind of three principles which are useful. And this is really not just about music. You could extrapolate this into life more generally. For example, I said, I've come here without a written speech, but that doesn't mean I'm just kind of randomly making stuff up at the moment. I am improvising, but obviously I'm basing it on something. And I think that to be a good improviser, you have to be aware of whatever the materials are that you're working with. And in most of the traditions in the world involving improvisation, that is about traditions which are handed down from generation to generation. And in dynamic environments, dynamic traditions, these things change over time. More and more information flows into that conversation, and these things achieve their own kind of relevance, and they become expressions of the very nature of time themselves. So the first thing is to be aware of your materials, to understand what it is that you are going to be improvising with, and control those things to the best of your ability. Because as improvising musicians, we're always trying to do something which we don't know. But in order to do something that we don't know, we have to know what we do know. And to control the knowing of something is very important in order to be able to reach beyond it to what we don't know. And to feel that that is a logical extension of what we do know. This is where creativity really is the cusp of defining that leaning into time. Not being afraid to go beyond what you know, but being aware of what you do know. As an improvising musician, the other thing you have to do, and again we can say that this is more true of life in general, is learn how to listen, right? Listening is very important when you're playing music, and it's very important in life in general. We know that conflict arises because people don't listen to each other's narrative. And everybody's narrative deserves to be listened to in order to be able to evaluate a way forward which does not involve actually killing people, ultimately. Music is a very good way of establishing controlled situations in which listening results in art, in beautiful communication, and something of greater than some of its parts. And then finally, what arises out of these things, out of a sort of a self-awareness and an ability to listen to other people, and after all, isn't listening a dynamic act of parking your ego at the door? To really listen to somebody, you've got to get out of the way for a moment. If those things are really happening, then what results is trust. And the perfect improvisational moment is one in which mutual trust is the paradigm. Now, I've had opportunities plenty through my career to road test these propositions, but where it changed my life was when I started to work with traditional musicians from a community in southeast Arnhem Land, in a little town called Nooka on the Robe River. And these men, who are Wagaluk-speaking people from the Yolngu cultural area, are people who travel around doing manakay. And manakay are ceremonial song cycles. They are publicly available. Of course, there are things which are not necessarily for the public, but very often they are public ceremony, and they are of indeterminate age, these songs. And I went into a situation where I expressed a desire to want to collaborate with people who had been working with some of the oldest material, living material, dynamic, changing material in the world, possibly the oldest continuous musical tradition. And would they be up for that kind of dialogue between where I was coming from, really very much a white fella proposition, and what they had been doing forever, essentially. And what I discovered out of that was the same principles, the same sense of complete awareness, of ability to go beyond, and of trust in the creative moment is exactly what drove them to do what they do. And so we were able to start working together. This is like back in 2004 we started this process. And over many, many experiences, taking this kind of message of collaboration, of listening, of working together towards some kind of shared paradigm, of something which results in something greater than the sum of its parts, and something which is truly expressive of who we are as one people. What emerged from that was a great revelation to me, and that is that Manakay, their song cycles, represent something quite profound, and that is the interconnectedness of all things. That when they sing these songs, they are referring to their ancestors and referring to their country, and that thing, since time immemorial, comes into a present. So it's a kind of a smashing through the space-time continuum. Something which is of indeterminate age becomes present. And this is what really blew my mind, that what my mob were bringing into this conversation, as far as they were concerned, was part of that Manakay. That was their truth as much as it was our truth. And that was a generous act of sharing. That, for me, as having been through many different situations in which collaboration and improvising and the giving and taking in those situations was really quite amazing. I mean, you want it, you yearn for it when it happens, and when it happens here in this place, as an expression of this country, that is really a life-changing experience. And that is why I talk about improvisation as representing the art of the possible. It has been for me, and I will continue to believe that. And if you in your lives understand that improvising is an expression of who you are, it's the way we deal with things as we go through our lives, and we are essentially improvisers. I think that if you can happily inhabit that space, it's a very, very good and a safe place to be. And you will be yourself exemplars of the art of the possible.